West Star class of 2012 class project. I've got with me here today Mr. Bo Booth, my former high school principal and longtime friend and mentor and community leader, and we're just going to talk about what's been going on with your life and some of the changes you've seen as an educator. And you were a principal at Gibson County High School for how long?
28 years.
28 years. Before that, you were principal at Dyer.
Dyer for 3 years, and then assistant principal before that. So 35 years of administration. 35
years. So you've spent, you might as well say 40 years in education.
Yeah.
So you've seen 40 years. That's been since 1972.
Well, I actually started teaching and coaching in Cooter, Missouri in 1968. So I had 39 years experience when I got out, and I got out been out 5 years.
So you've been in education as long as I've been alive. I was born in '68.
I was in it 39 wonderful years.
So you've seen it all. And
I've seen a lot of it. A lot of changes.
What kind of, in your opinion, it may not be fair to compare generations, but we always end up doing that in a way. What kind of changes have you noticed over the past 40 years in terms of behavior and in terms of maybe work ethic?
Well, Mr. Mayor, the kids have changed. Again, my first job was in Cooter, Missouri, a little river town over across Mississippi, and very small town. And just really didn't have that many problems or whatever. It was a very small school, and I wasn't an administrator then in '68, but the society has changed, and consequently the students and children have changed, and we've all heard it, but it's so true that there's no discipline anymore, and I am in homes now for church reasons or whatever, visiting people, and the things I see are scary with regard to what's going on in the homes. And the home is, Mr. Mayor, to me is the most important institution there is. More important than church, as important as church is, and more important than any other institution. And kids just don't respond to parents, and then when they don't, how can we expect them in the educational circles to respond? But I am in homes more now than I used to be, and it's kind of scary, some things that I see.
You segue perfectly into the next part of my question, and in my opinion, I think that that we're asking our teachers and our educators to play the role of parent, or play the role of good parent.
Well,
and I think that maybe, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems to me that we're asking teachers to not only teach math and science, and which is a big job in and of itself, but we're also asking to teach children basic mannerisms too.
Well, Mr. Mayor, the education, in my humble opinion, has been asked to do too much and wear too many hats. And of course, from a spiritual standpoint, we understand you can't do any of that now with regard to that. And that was something you used to do. But contrary to that, there was a huge uproar when we finally, Gibson County High School, I don't know how many years ago, 15, 20, whatever, we finally dropped driver education. Well, everybody wanted us to have driver education to keep those in, and I was a benefactor of it in regard to my son, whom you know, but it was great for insurance purposes for a teenage boy, especially, to be able to have driver education. So people, but we, with the pressure and Tom, the times have changed so much with regard to accountability, and that's, I know we're not here necessarily for education today, but just the community, and education is a huge part of the community, as you well know as mayor.
Absolutely.
But we have such accountability, and right now I happen to know that TCAP is going on, or it may have finished in my town of Dyer today, I'm not sure, but I know all week they've been in that. And then end of course testing for high school, which I certainly was much more familiar with. TCAP was for elementary. But all these tests are accountability things, and I'm not sure that we have the right accountability, but I never had a problem with accountability time. If I wasn't doing my job, I didn't think I needed to be there and whatever. And but again, getting back to what we were saying about the roles in school, there's more pressure than ever before, and rightfully so, for us to academically be improving these children's and preparing them for life better than we ever have before. Public education has taken a lot of hits, and some are deserved, so, and some are not. But with regard to education, and again, I think another thing, abstinence and sexual transmitted disease, and all those things. My goodness, that's important. Oh, it's so important. But how can we do that and then answer and teach driver ed, which is basically a gone thing in education, I think, today. But how can you do all those things? And teaching is such a noble profession. I was proud to be an educator and proud to save people. And I just call myself a teacher, but that's all I was. I just happened to be in administration for 39 years. But what a, outside of maybe a pastor or a doctor, MD, medical doctor, there's nothing more noble than being a teacher. And such a great responsibility. And somebody quoted me as saying one time that the most underpaid person is a good teacher, and the most overpaid one is a bad one. And the late Jim Siler, former State Farm man,
Mr. Jim,
said I made that statement one time, and I guess I did because he quoted on me on that a bunch of times. But a good teacher, boy, is so valuable to this community and so important.
I can honestly say I don't think I had a bad teacher. If I ever had a bad teacher, I can't recall it. And I was so blessed and fortunate to have had educators like yourself and teachers that were tough enough on me to not give up on me. And I gave you plenty of opportunities to do that. I know I did.
You were a special student in a positive way, Tom, and because I'm quoting you and doing things, telling stories on you all the time, and what a delight you were, and I say that sincerely.
Well, I appreciate that.
But, with regard to, if somebody were going to have something on my tombstone in terms of my profession, Tom, I would have liked for it to said tough love, because I am a believer in tough love. I try to raise my son that way with regard to that. And first of all, we've got to love them. But if we really love them, we've got to say no to them, and we've got to be tough. And I think students always really wanted discipline. They would admit they did, but they wanted discipline. They wanted parameters and guidelines to live by because they weren't sure. And I think we make a big mistake when we're not tough. But it's got to be out of love. I'll tell this story, and again, I'm getting off a little bit, but my son was going to school. I'm divorced, but he moved back and went to school his last 2 years and graduated from Gibson County High School. And he was going to an advanced chemistry class that met at 7 o'clock prior to school at 8 o'clock. And he lived with his mom, and I kept noticing maybe my son was late getting to that 7 o'clock class. And so I had a little mention to the teacher to take care of it, and certainly mentioned to my son to take care of it. But it didn't work, and so I was monitoring that pretty closely, Mr. Mayor. And so I realized that he wasn't on time on a particular day, and so I called him to the office. This is 7:30 in the morning, 7:20, I don't know. And I said, John, you're late. All about punctuality and responsibility and whatever. I said, I'm going to paddle. So I got ready to paddle. And my son said, Tom, he said, I said, "Sir, are you paddling me as a father or principal?" And I said both. But I say that's about tough love, Tom. That's what I'm talking about.
I recall an incident. I'm going to throw a hardball question at you now. We're going to move on up to hardball questions. In September of 1983, there was an incident involving some ice cream treats missing from a cafeteria. And that crime was pinned on a young man, some say falsely. Some even called that young man a scapegoat in that particular incident. Do you recall that incident?
I do not.
Well, that young man was Tom Witherspoon.
Then I can see how you could recall it.
And all joking aside, I did steal the Nutty Buddies. But in my defense, I was sharing them with my friends, kind of like a Robin Hood type.
Yeah, that sounds like Robin Hood.
Yeah, I'd take them to the bathroom, divvy them out with my friends. But I remember once I was caught at it. I lied to you about it. I was in the 9th grade. I hadn't been there long, and I think that was the second time you had to paddle me, and you brought me in your office. I'll never forget it. You took your paddle, you tapped on the corner of the desk with it, and you said it's not going to break. It's not going anywhere. I've had it for a long time, and you said I promise you one thing. You said I may not break you from anything else, but I'm going to break you from lying to me over the next 4 years. And I don't think I lied to you again.
Yeah, and when you told that story, and the Lord knows I didn't remember it, but number one, that paddle was old. It came from Mr. W.A. West. It had it at Dyer, and when I was principal at Dyer, I inherited it from him, and I took it out to Gibson County High School and used it for a long time. And of course, today, corporal punishment is a whole different subject, and I wouldn't want to get in that unless you wanted to. But with regard to that, yeah, Tom, there were 2 or 3 things that basically I look for in students. I could stand about anything as long as the attitude was good and they said, I've done the crime and you've got me, and they didn't lie to me. And so, yeah, I'm sure in 1983 on that day I said, we're going to work hard on this, because I got to trust somebody with regard to having a relationship with them and whatever. But that's a great story, Tom, and I appreciate you sharing it with me, and I hope we're both better men for that day and that time.
I can definitely say I am. I'd love to be able to tell you I never told another lie my whole life after that, but I told a lot less.
That's like we just came out of revival this week at First Baptist Church in Dyer, and the invitation on the last night, Wednesday night, the evangelist, it was great, said, remember, we are sinless. And by that, we sin less as Christians, but we still sin and whatever. And I hope I sin less, and I hope I lie less than in 1983 than I do now. Tom.
Amen to that. I'm going to go along with you on that. Amen. But back to community changes and that, what or who in your life would you say impacted you, say, to become an educator or to strive to be the leader that you are? Was there anybody in particular that really impacted you as a young man or at any time in your life?
Yeah, Tom, I grew up in playing sports, even though I'm not an athlete. I'm going this weekend to play golf, and I'll guarantee you I'll be the worst in the bunch. And why they even let me go with them, I'm not sure, unless they like me to drive the vehicle. I'm driving to Pickwick this weekend, but wasn't a good athlete, but I always loved athletics, and I wanted to coach. And I coached and got my first job, and from Union University I was interviewed and went over to Cooter, Missouri, and crossed the river scared to death, and making $6,200, I believe, is when I started out at it. I coached there, and then I went on to Haytime, Missouri for 2 years after that, 2 years at Cooter, and then 2 years at Haytime. And then from there I came to Dyer, Tennessee, where Mr. J. Leno Wingo hired me as assistant principal. Been in administration ever since, but I always wanted to coach, Tom, starting out. And I coached, and the first 2 years, and very 7 and 15, 7 and 16, I think, in the 2 years that I was at this high school there. And so then I went to junior high by my own choice in Haytime and coached there for 2 years. But I began to realize after that second year, I had a child by that time and had married by that time. I realized I wasn't going to make much money. I realized I wasn't going to be the John Wooden at UCLA that I was hoping I was going to be. And reality kind of set in, and so I began to go back to school, drove back and forth to Jonesboro, Arkansas, getting a master's degree, and later got a degree higher than that, or specialist degree, and realized I needed to get into administration, or wanted to. And when I did, Tom, I look back at it, and there was so much pressure in coaching because of that scoreboard up there. And on a given night, be it and I coached some football too, and some basketball, but on a given night, you could, in a good high school setting, you could have 2,000 people monitoring your work for that week, and that's pretty tough. And so when I went into administration, is one thing I realized: tremendously tough hours, but the scoreboard wasn't there then. Now, Tom, the scoreboard's there now, and I'm saying it's good. The scoreboard's there with, you read the Jackson Sun, and you hear TVs and whatever talking about in Memphis, Jackson, or wherever, rural West Tennessee, TCAP, and of course testing, and the accountability is there. There's a scoreboard now. There's not 2,000 necessarily sitting there watching your event, but yeah, there is. And I said before, I preceded to said that 20 minutes ago or 15 minutes ago. Accountability is good. But anyway, to answer your question, I just wanted to coach, and then I realized, and you know what, I never did rise above a principal. Not that I'm apologizing or anything. Pretty big responsibility. But I would have never been happy in a superintendent's office. People may not have been happy with me in a superintendent's office. But my point is, I love the relationship with the students. And today it is so gratifying. And it's taken 5 years, but more and more I think people say that guy he wasn't as bad as I thought he was. And boy, I have people talk to me and say they miss me and whatever, and it makes an old man feel good.
Well, that's good stuff. You should feel good about what you do.
Well, I hope so. I've worked hard at it, worked so hard. I gave it all that I had, and I got this from one of my superintendents, John Scott, but you can remember this one, Tom, but I love it because it would be true about Tom Spoon as well. Mr. Scott used to say, if I made an error here, it's an error of the head and not the heart. And boy, I love that.
That is good.
I made some errors with the head, but my heart, I wanted to do right.
It was all
Prayed
right,
about
right.
it every morning. I got up 4 o'clock in the morning, Tom, for my last 10 or 15 years, and would work out and pray as I ran, if I was running that particular morning, and then get back to the house and shower and be in my office at 6:15. I was a wired dude. At 6:15 in the morning, I'd prayed and exercised, and I was pumped up. And about that night, by about 6 o'clock, I was worn out, ready to go home. And the sad part was I had another 3 or 4 hours, many nights, with athletics or board meetings or whatever, and that's what wore me out. But I gave it all I had to it, and I think the fact of so many nights in the last 15 years, especially as I began to exercise and spiritually pray and read the Bible in the morning, it just wore me out, getting to bed at 10 and getting up at 4, or some mornings, I didn't every morning do that, but 80% of the mornings, four mornings a week, I exercised and did all that, and so it kind of wore me out, but I gave it all I had, and but I like that statement here of the head and not the heart.
I'm going to use that. I'm going to steal that.
I use it all the time, Tom. When somebody says something or whatever.
Speaking of Tom Spoon, we talked about this the other day. I believe you tagged me with that nickname.
I hope that I said that to you, Mr. Mayor. I said to you when I saw you at a funeral home on a particular instant last week. I said, I hope, because that is stuck with you to the point that in the newspaper, especially when you were running, the spoon was used a lot. And I really thought that I had given you that nickname, and so you confirmed it the other night. I didn't want to take credit for or blame for something that was good if I didn't do it, or bad if I didn't do it, but you said I was the one, and I sure thought I was.
So in a way, you're kind of responsible for all this.
Well, I understand. I don't know if that's good or bad, but yeah, Tom.
I'm gonna try to make it a good thing. I'm
Yeah,
gonna try to
you
make
are.
it proud.
You are making it a good thing.
Well, I appreciate that.
I am proud to tell people that Mr. Tom Witherspoon, Gibson County Mayor, was a graduate of Gibson County High School. We've talked about a lot of stories and things. You've already talked about one with regard to that, but you were a delight and always funny. And you know I'm quoting some of the things that I did that the other day.
Well, that's fine.
Of some of the things that you'd said and whatever. And my son, I don't know how y'all compare age-wise. He's 40, but he knows you as you well know, and you know him. But we have a lot of Tom Spoon stories that we share from time to time, and I'm going to let him know that we've had this situation this morning.
I don't know if you remember this or not. You came in the study hall one day and asked for somebody to work. I had split study hall my senior year, and I worked in the cafeteria. Do you remember that?
No, I don't remember.
You asked me, you said, anybody want to work? And I want to get out of class, so I threw my hand up, and you took me to the cafeteria, and man, that ended up being a sweet gig. One of the sweetest gigs I ever had. I didn't even know it was a paying gig till my first paycheck came in. I think it paid $5 an hour or something like that, but I got my lunch free. Every day I got to eat back in the kitchen with Jack Davison and Crazy Ray Murphy and
Crazy Ray,
yeah. Man, that was you wouldn't think wiping trays off in a cafeteria could be a fun job, but it really was. Man, it was a fun job, and it was a fun time to be in school. And we've got problems facing our community and trust me when I say this. At times it feels like we're the only ones suffering through these changes, be it good or bad, but I hear the same thing everywhere I go all over the state. It's the same story told at different meetings.
Yeah.
We've got to reestablish our work ethic. We've got to reestablish ourselves spiritually, morally. It's going to take a paradigm shift of monumental proportions to do it, but I feel like it can be done.
Well, I do, and from a spiritual standpoint, as I look at our country and look at whatever, and so concerned about it and whatever, and yet I know over in Revelation it says that Jesus will win, God will win, and we may not supposed to be spiritually talking like that here. I don't know.
We can talk about anything we want.
But with regard to that, we just have to remember that God's the victor over Satan, and it'll work out in the end. At the end, if you go to the back of the book to read the end of the story, it's a great ending.
It really is. And I'm gonna sound like a politician saying this, but I really, really mean it. I got a chance to speak to the seniors at Gibson County High School not long ago, and it was a joy to get to do that. And I tried to be honest with them about some of the mistakes I made during my young life, and some of the mistakes I made in my adult life, and continue to make mistakes. And I've tried to, if nothing else, be a cautionary tale. And I like to tell them, I said, if I'd known I was going to amount to anything, I'd have got a better education. I'd have seen to it. But I really believe in my heart, and I'm starting to see it now, a change in young people's attitudes. I mean, I get more calls from young people wanting work. I don't know if it's been brought on by the difficult financial times we find ourselves in now, or what's. But I'm really starting to see a slow but sure turnaround, and I hope I'm right.
I hope you are too. We need it badly, and times are tough. And my friends and I talk about how many times we see people, and I've been saying this for 5 years, or 4 or 5, but I see everybody pulling lawnmowers around. There's people that have really gone to work and having to, I mean, maybe they were already working. This is a second job for them. My point is, there's plenty of people, Tom, that are working at a job 8 to 5 and then going out mowing till dark. But if you just look around, Mr. Mayor, in our area here, there's all the trailers pulling 2 and 3 lawnmowers all the time, and people are really, this isn't, a person that works that hard, but again, if we have to do it, we need to do it.
There's a story you'd like to tell on me about an auction we were
Yes.
at one. And I can't remember if it was a band booster
It was
auction.
band.
Was it band booster?
Yes.
And
Saturday night.
band booster auction. You want to tell?
I would love to tell that story. And this is the Tom Spoon that I knew and still know and whatever. But anyway, a big crowd. That band booster bunch was big and powerful and still are. And our band, by the way, has been 4 state championships, I believe, and been very, very successful and due a lot to those band boosters. That from the get-go in 1980 when we opened Gibson County High School, they were gung-ho and they lit up a bit, and that's good. But anyway, they were having this auction, and it was a big auction, and the horseshoe end of the gymnasium, if you're familiar with Gibson County High School, was filled. And there's another Saturday night, old Bo Booth was working, but I was divorced and single, and it's probably a good thing because no wife would have lived with me anyway. But I was there on this particular Saturday night, and I was sitting up near the top. And if anyone again is familiar with the physical setting of Gibson County High School, we were in the horseshoe end of the gym, and the band boosters were on the gym floor, and they began to auction off a trolling motor. And Mr. Mayor happened to be the one to get the high bid on that, and he got it. So Tom ambled down the steps to pick up his possession, or his prized possession there, and as Tom was walking back up, he said, "Now all I need is a boat." And so, with regard to that, that's Tom Spoon humor at its best, and I've never forgotten that story, and Tom knows I tell it on him a lot, and tell that story last week to some people.
Well, that's kind of my governing style too. I like that. We're gonna turn things around sooner or later. It's gonna happen. We may have to start off with just the trolling motor and build the boat later.
Oh, we have just really come up with an analogy here, Tom. That's huge. That'll be all over America.
What do you think about that?
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, we're gonna buy the trolling motor first, then we're gonna build the boat.
There you go. Boy, that needs media coverage right there.
Mr. Booth, I appreciate you being here.
Hey,
I appreciate everything you've done for me.
My pleasure,
Thank
Tom.
you.
Thank you.
All right. That's a wrap. That's good.
Well, I hope
What do you
so.
think about that?
I hope so.
That's good stuff. Thank you again.
No, I'm honored to tell people that I was invited to see the mayor. I told somebody that and they didn't understand. One of the guys that were saying, I told him, I said, "Now, I can't leave till X amount